Hey there, everybody, welcome back. It's Enigmatic Entertainment back again with another video. This time is the next part of the Kid Cudi album review series that I've been doing. Previously was Satellite Flight, The Journey to Mother Moon, and now, of course, it is Speedin Bullet to Heaven. This is the fifth solo album by Kid Cudi. This is released in 2015. This album pretty much takes Cudi almost completely away from hip-hop as a genre, really, as opposed to his previous album, which had at least a little bit hip-hop influence in it. This is also his longest album up to date, and a double disc as that. First disc is like the actual album or whatever, and then the second disc is like various types of demos and all that stuff, you know. So, hey, let's get right into it. Track 1 is Edge of the Earth / Post-Mortem Boredom. This is the album opener and a very depressing and lo-fi sounding track. Edge of the Earth has someone who I can't even really tell, but I assume it's Cudi because no one else is mentioned as a feature or anything. They're singing about hanging on to the edge of the earth, which you could assume is a metaphor for, suicide. As the second part of the song is, post-mortem boredom, which basically means being bored after death, or, post-death boredom. And is the general down tone of the song, very melancholy. You could assume it is indeed someone dealing with suicidal thoughts. Post-mortem boredom is basically Cudi singing about being dead and bored, as the title states. Not my song at all. It's a skip. Not a good start to the album. But track 2, Confused, with the exclamation point. So you got to say it like confused. This is the first single released from the album, and easily one of my favorite tracks. I still listen to this like on a regular basis, pretty much. It is a standout track for me. And as you can probably imagine, this track has Cudi singing about how confused he is in his life and asking questions about himself and others. There's a theme of confusion, self-doubt, and pain that's very common on a lot of this album, but this is one of the songs that really hits it home for me personally, and is one that touches on it that I thoroughly enjoy. Next up is track 3, Man in the Night. This kind of sounds like some kind of like Nirvana song, really. That's the best way for me to describe it. Not much else to really say about it. Cudi's talking about being a man of the night and, basically singing about the nightlife and how much he loves it, really. I'm not a huge fan of this track either. And this is the first of a few songs on this album that features a skit from Mike Judge, who is from the show Beavis and Butthead. And I don't know why he put these skits on here. I guess Cudi just really enjoys the show. And I used to watch it as a kid, so I get that. The skits to me are a little bit unnecessary. I really don't need them. It's just Mike Judge who does the voice. He does the voice for both of those characters, and he comes in at the end of the song and he talks a little bit about the song and Kid Cudi and so on and so forth in the voice of those two characters. Check it out and you'll see exactly what I mean. Next up is track 4, Screwed. This has Cudi touching more on the topic of hopelessness again. In a way, shown by lyrics talking about how screwed we are and how life is losing its appeal, and, with lines like being like a deer in headlights, just pretty dark thoughts. Not the happiest stuff at all, if you know what I mean. It's also among one of the shorter tracks on the album, and it makes me feel more depressed than I already am. Cudi's vocals and repetitive melancholy guitar chords make it quite clear the state of mind that he is really in, and I'm glad it's short because this is another one of those tracks I really could just skip. It's a little bit too depressing for me, honestly. I'd rather not stay in that state of mind if I can help it. Next up is Fade to Red. This is a song all about rage. More grunge, more anger, more pain. Cudi shows off more of his guitar skills here and his intense anger about something. He's yelling about nobody being home, being stuck with these idiots. It sounds like the cries of a young person living at home with like his family or whatever and feeling lonely and angry at their living situation, which is very, very relatable to me personally, and I'm sure plenty of you as well. If that's what he's trying to imply, then I completely agree with him, and I understand it. Then on the bridge, he's talking about like he's telling the listeners there's like no saving him. He has to bleed and all this stuff, and it's pretty dark, just like a good portion of this album is. The song's all right, a little too enraged for me, but hey, not the worst song at all. Next up is Adventures. Once again, this is another one of my favorite tracks on the album. Easily another standout, top 3 without a doubt. Right along up there with Confused. This might be my favorite. I'm not sure, really. It's definitely a standout, though. Like I said, sounds much more like the Kid Cudi that I'm used to and enjoy listening to. I think it's great, and if more of the album just sounded like this track right here, I would definitely like the album as more. And I'm sure other people feel the same way. Minus a line or two in the song about, like, vaginas and chicken sandwiches and something being moist and some wild stuff. It's become like a running gag for this song, unfortunately, which can take away from the rest of the song if you allow it. And this is, once again, one of the songs that has the Beavis and Butthead skit, which pretty much is to my dislike and kind of brings the song down for me. I kind of have to just cut it off instantly right before the skit. That just makes it, it's unnecessary to me. But definitely one of my favorite songs, though. Next up is The Nothing. This is like some kind of horror movie in like Kid Cudi song form. He sings in some eerie tone about someone giving him candy. According to a tweet by Cudi, the song is about addiction, hence the candy reference and haunting tone. I suppose the voice in his head craving the addiction is the nothing because it's just like a figment of his imagination, brought on by like withdrawal or something maybe, or maybe just the fact that nothing good comes from addiction, especially to drugs. The chop it up, cut it lines are surely a reference to cocaine, which Cudi used to do. But of course, that's just my interpretation of it. I mean, hey, maybe I'm off base. Very dark sounding song, though, once again. Next up is Amen. This has Cudi doing something with his vocals that I really don't like. Once again, I just don't like this. He does this vocal effect that makes it sound like he's speaking into a bad microphone or underwater or something. It's like kind of drowned out and, like muffled maybe. It's hard to describe. Lyrically, he talks about seeing demons walking around in daylight. And, they have an appetite and he's going to slave them. He's going to slay them to save the men. And then in his verses, he's talking about fake, phony people again. And then I'm just like interpreting it as, I guess, the demons themselves are the fake people around him. So he has to kill the demons by like getting them away from him. And it's also a metaphor for fake people being demonic and just evil. And he doesn't like them. So he's saving other people from the fake people and the bad ones, I guess. I don't know. This is another one that I'm just like very relatable, but I don't like the vocal effect, so I'm just like, this is another one where I just pass on, really. The subject matter, fine, I get it. There's a metaphor there somewhere, but just take off that vocal effect and it would be much better. Next up is Handle with Care. This is like a self-realization. Cudi is telling the listeners about his fragility, and as the title says, obviously to handle him with care. Because of this, he acknowledges that he is an angry, damaged, delicate, and extreme person at times, but that he does indeed love very strongly. Truly, this is one of the most relatable songs for me personally on this album, as I feel almost the exact same way in my relationships as Cudi is speaking of. Feeling very damaged, angry, and, delicate. And to handle with some sense of care and tact. With this simple guitar playing in the background, this song comes off quite simple and clean. Very plain as an honest heart-to-heart with this woman in question. And then the song abruptly ends and turns into another Beavis and Butthead skit. And I'm just like, why? Why are you doing this to me on the songs that I actually like, or decent, or, you know what I mean? Dang. Next up is Judgmental Cunt. This one, it seems like he's speaking from the perspective of his haters that just keep hating on him for who he is. It comes across as a bit of a rant, like some kind of Twitter thing. And I suppose that's how it's supposed to sound. It's very angry from the tone of voice to the guitar playing, comes across very aggressive. Cudi's yelling about being a loser little boy, stoner, dumb punk, people doubting him and all that stuff, that he'll ever be successful. It's very relatable, once again, to me, like a good portion of this album is. You know, self-doubt and dealing with that doubt and whatnot and hate, that others give you can be very mentally taxing. And I understand his frustration here. I've been called loser, dumb, punk. People doubted me all the time, plenty of times, especially growing up. So I understand this. Feeling like people are judgmental, very many times I can relate to that, honestly. So I get it. Not a bad song at all. Next up is Séance Chaos. This is the shortest track on the album, and another one where Cudi's just raging. It sounds like just noise. It's just freaking noise to me, honestly. It's just like, no. I have no idea what's going on production-wise. I guess this is like some kind of punk rock or something. I don't really listen to this stuff, honestly, outside of like for doing this album. I barely can hear what Cudi's vocals over the instruments. I can barely hear it, what he's saying over like the instrumentation sometimes. It's definitely going to be something to listen to if you're in a certain mood and you're like a fan of this genre already, then I guess it makes sense. But like the song title is Chaos, I definitely understand the chaos in this song. And it fits. Just not for me, once again. No. Next up is Fairy Tale Remains. This speaks of like a fairy tale romance that didn't seem to turn out the way it should have. Perhaps the title is alluding to the fact that the fairy tale is still just a fairy tale because he can't seem to find the relationship that he's picturing in his mind. He speaks of nothing being left, fake concern, having no devotion, clearly signs of a bad relationship and or breakup. Followed by the line of like, this is so us, unfortunately. It leaves a hint of like regret, however, about how things turned out. He's like, this is us, unfortunately. Like I don't want it to be that way, but it is. And once again, I can relate, definitely. It's eerie how much of this stuff I can relate to, especially when it comes to the self-doubt, the depression, the haters, and the relationship problems. Wow. On the outro, he speaks of a man and a woman that don't love one another and not knowing what love is. Even questioning, in my interpretation, they don't know what love is, so how can they love one another? Like, do we really love ourselves? Can we love one another without knowing if we love ourselves and what that self-love is? And it's just another standout track for me because it goes a little bit deeper than some of the other tracks do and sounds quite good. One of the better sounding tracks and more fleshed out, I'd say. Once again, has me reminiscing of relationships and things of that nature, and this fairy tale romance and love and whatnot. But hey, easily top 3 song for me again. Next up is Wedding Tux. This is a song all about being used, which, he mentions like being pushed and pulled and all that. Emotional slave sluts, being tossed aside like rotten meat. He gets pretty descriptive here, as you can see, what exactly how he feels about being used by people, which is a recurring theme in his songs. Now the question is, in this particular, is he talking about a woman again, or is he talking about fans, haters, or maybe like record labels in the music industry, chewing him up and spitting him out and whatnot? It's not quite clear in this song who he's referring to. He does reference a she, but that can easily be a metaphor for anything else, like the things I've mentioned. Once again, another relatable song, as the feeling of being used is definitely one I feel deeply and have dealt with far too often in my personal life. Next up is the track Angered Kids. Like a good portion of this album, he really speaks more on the feelings of anger that people feel and the dangers that come along with that. He speaks about dynamite, hand grenades, the darkness coming. Pretty enraging and violent stuff that I don't recommend anyone that is be going out and doing. No me messing with no dynamite, kids. No. No is good. Not good at all. Another song I relate to, but is not for me sonically. It just doesn't sound very good. He does that thing again with his vocals where it's kind of drowned out and just like muffled. And it's like, and I'm like, can you stop, man? Can you just stop? I mean, come on now. Red Sabbath is the next track, and it's a much calmer and relaxed song compared to some of the earlier tracks on the album. However, that rage and anger is replaced instead by a bit of depression and suicidal thoughts again. Once again, Cudi speaking almost directly to me, like with lyrics like wanting to escape, clouds staying gray, and a she that feeds on the weak. Really showing how cold and hard it can be for some of us that suffer from mental health disorders. The track finishes with yet again another Beavis and Butthead skit, and it leads right into the next track, Fuschia Butterflies. This is a track where Cudi really delves deeper once again into depression, alcoholism, and loneliness. The song is an oxymoron at times, as 1 second he says he's happy getting drunk alone, then he states how he doesn't like the sweet misery that he's even found himself in, and it's just like, well, which one is it, man? Then he also admits to messing up with his relationship and tells the woman to do the right thing and just stay away from him. Clearly he's admitted to his problems, but he's gone quite deep into just accepting them for what they are in this song, and once again contemplates suicide, as shown as the song mentions a gun right at the end of the song. Very deep. Not a bad track, but it is the kind of song that can be quite worrisome and shows a sharp reflection at oneself and mental health issues. The next track is Speedin Bullet to Heaven, the title track, and the second single from the album. This is another song that covers suicidal thoughts again. This is very common in this album. As the title says, he's speeding to heaven, or in other words, facing death. It's touched on with a sense of peace, though, as he says, whether he crashes or lands, he'll be smiling still, and he's okay. He also mentions how boring people can be, which is another symptom of depression, being bored a lot. And it ties into that whole suicidal feeling, like the first track, being bored of life and bored of death and everything. It's a lot. This track is very peaceful and really sounds like an album finisher, despite there still being one more song on this disc and then the whole second disc to go. This is another one of the tracks that I can enjoy, despite the pretty dark subject matter once again. And then next up is track 18, the finisher of the first disc, Embers. And once again, last track on the first disc, basically the album closer, and is apparently like about Kid Cudi's father dying from cancer and written from the perspective of his father. Cudi repeatedly mentions not wanting to leave, but having to because of the cancer that they realize they don't have a solution to. Very dark, disturbing, depressing, and heartfelt. This is just one of multiple songs where Cudi mentions his father and his death. Understandably so that this topic would come up time and time again in his music. He's mentioned it at least once or twice in like every one of his albums, I believe. And I understand why it would be on this one too. That's a very traumatic experience, I am quite sure. However, this is the first one where I heard him mention what killed his father, at least in some detail, and talked about how he probably felt. This can be somewhat considered the album closer, since most of the second disc is really just demos and whatnot, like I said before. And it's also this song, hey, this sound, look at the subject matter. I understand it, why it would, finish out the album. That's disc 1. Now disc 2, track 1, Anamoly - rehearsal demo. This is the first track of the second disc, and for the first 2 minutes or so, it's just an instrumental that has, it's alright. It sounds alright. But then Cudi starts singing with some kind of lo-fi quality, making it hard to really even understand what he's saying again, so I don't really have much to say about it. Once again, this is demos. It's not even really fully fleshed out songs for the most part. Track 2, though, is the return of Chip Douglas - demo. The first time I listened to this album, I don't think I ever listened to the second disc because I do not remember this song at all. And that's probably because this is considered demo, so I just skip right past it, honestly. This song is a good example of what I really don't need, though. I've seen a few comments online talking about how this is the worst song on the album, and I can see why. Cudi goes on for a few minutes with guitar strumming in the background, and he's singing about how he has a new friend that doesn't think he's a weirdo, and she's not annoying to him. It sounds great on paper, I guess, It's nice to have a new friend, no problem. But then it slowly gets worse as he descends into this kind of madness and changes his vocal tone, and the guitar strumming starts to sound angrier, faster, and all of that. And he starts saying some other stuff about, just a little darker with that friend of his, mentions of choking and things of that nature. So yeah, let's just keep on going. I see why it's a demo. Next track is Trauma. This has Kid Cudi reminiscing about seeing obviously traumatic experiences growing up and how he lost his innocence because of it. The first verse dealing with seeing his father's corpse, and the second verse dealing with seeing his friend's corpse at the ages of 11 and 15 respectively. I'm sure most of us really can't relate too much to seeing a corpse, really. I know I can't, really, at least in person. But trauma in general is a problem for many of us. Really heavy stuff like a lot of this album is. It's pretty traumatic stuff. This is probably one of the songs that tends to stay on topic, though, on this album, and especially the second disc, and is really coherent. And despite it still being a demo, so props for that. And the rough subject matter and how he handled it. I understand trauma to Cudi. I'm sure it's hard. The next track is Wait - Rehearsal Demo. This is another song where I'm just like, yo, what the hell is going on? It's pretty noisy, and Cudi is freaking yelling about his mother and eating and stuff and dates, and I'm just like, well, maybe if this song was fleshed out, I might enjoy it more. The ideas are pretty scattered. It doesn't stay on topic either. I don't know what's going on. It's once again very punk rockish sounding, or at least that's what comes to my mind when I hear it. I'm not the biggest fan, once again, of this genre, so I don't know all the subgenres in it. It's also the shortest song on the second disc, clocking in at just under 2 minutes. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that one. The next track is Insides Out. Cudi is crying, he's dying, and he's questioning his sanity. I can't stop crying, and I'm just like, it's very repetitive lyrically and not very dense. Clearly, the pain that haunts Cudi has reached a point where songs like this, or demos at least, are what he comes up with when he steps into the booth. Perhaps, as the title says, he's using the music to bring his insides, as in his emotions and whatnot, out to the public. And once again, it's very relatable. However, it's lacking the kind of depth on what bothers him and whatnot, so we can really feel with him on a more personal level. It's very, like a few of these songs are, very general and whatnot, and a bit vague. If it was fleshed out a little bit more, it'd probably be a lot better. Next up is Speedin Bullet to Heaven - Acoustic Demo. As the title says, of course, this is an acoustic version of the single. It is shorter and just lacks some of the instrumentation. This is just acoustic, so no electric instruments or whatever. I believe in the synths and all that stuff. I don't know. I don't know what the names of all these different instruments are, but this is a lot more bare bones and a bit shorter. So I would prefer the album version, really. Next up is Worth. This is a song that's pretty dang blunt. It's about self-worth and his relationship, that seems to be just based around sex between Cudi and this woman. He states that they hate themselves, but they want to fix it. Perhaps alluding to the idea of them having a better, more meaningful relationship with each other or someone else once they feel better about themselves as individuals and know their own self-worth and have this higher self-esteem and confidence. It's shown more by the chorus of her stating that she's not worth it, and Cudi feeling the same way about his own self. Once again, maybe a little bit more depth into exactly why they feel this way, so we can connect better more with Cudi and whatnot, and it'll be a better song. But of course, once again, I understand that these are all considered demos, but hey, Next up is Melting, the finisher of the second disc and overall closer. spoken from the point of view from someone who has experimented with various substances. You know, like Cudi, he talks about melting and crumbling, and like perhaps it's acid or some kind of other psychedelic substance that gives him this sensation. I've never tried this stuff myself. I've only talked to people that have and listened to music like this. So that's once again my interpretation of it. It's pretty. He's melting. He's freaking whacked out of his mind, I suppose. Off of these, it's not no secret. He does various substances. He says in his music. So I don't know what to do about that one. But hey, overall, Speedin Bullet to Heaven. It's an album that definitely has some songs I can relate to, as I've said countless times in this review, and even enjoy listening to some of them. Like I said, some songs like Adventures and Fairy Tale Remains and Confused are favorites of mine from Kid Cudi overall, and I can still listen to them on a regular basis. The album itself, though, has a bunch of highs and lows and all that, and just a bit too many of the lows for me. The first disc felt a little bit more finished than the second disc. Granted, the second disc admittedly is marked as demos, so I understand that in that regard, but nonetheless, it still has to be considered because it was released for commercial consumption, just like the first disc was. It's not like it was free and he just tossed it out. It was a package deal. This is, up to this point, still his longest album, and a few songs could have just been removed from the album, or just changed and merged into a few less songs. You could have combined more ideas to make more concrete songs, and be a little bit more descriptive. This one has little to no rapping on it at all, and is the most un-hip-hop sounding of all of Cudi's albums. So for my personal enjoyment, being a hip-hop listener mainly, you know what it is. This is honestly probably on my bottom for my personal ranking of his solo albums so far. However, I did get some enjoyment out of it. It wasn't all bad. I can see how fans of this genre, of these subgenres maybe, could like it a lot more than I do. And I definitely still have a few tracks that I would definitely still listen to. I could have done without the Beavis and Butthead skits, though, of course, that a few tracks, maybe 4 or 5 of them, have on them, and that alone would have shortened it by like a few minutes. So, hey, So, once again, there's a few tracks on there I like, but some of them could have just been taken off completely, either because of the subject matter or the lack of depth or the vocal effects and various things like I've mentioned previously. So once again, guys, that was Speedin Bullet to Heaven, the 5th solo album by Kid Cudi. What do you think about it? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What do you think? And, of course, click that thumbs up button if you like the video. That's the like button. And, of course, leave a comment in the comment section below if you have any questions or comments or anything like that about Kid Cudi's songs, this album in particular, any of his music. I'm reviewing pretty much all of it, all of his solo stuff. And definitely looking forward to Man of the Moon 3. And, of course, what album is next after this, Passion, Pain, and Demon Slaying, PPNDS. You see how I feel about that album pretty dang soon. So, as usual, make sure you follow the channel on Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter, the TIT. And, of course, the links will be in the description box below. And thank you for watching, guys. To check out some of the other reviews. And if you have any suggestions about that stuff for what to review next, just leave it in the comment section below or hit me up on any one of those various sites. And thank you for watching. It is Enigmatic Entertainment, Enigmatic Reviews, Kid Cudi, Speedin Bullet to Heaven, and I'm out.